and what a dummy!
Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft Podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
In contrast to last week, I'm super prepared this week. Seen all the
prepared.
games. God, I even watched a President's Grade pre-season game between Papamoa and Brother Heat.
Oh, wow. Wow. That is in-depth analysis.
Oh, it is, yeah. I've got it all covered.
We're recording this on Monday, March the 28th. So we're going to do a review of Game Week 5. We'll go across to the free agent desk. I wanted to see if you felt the same way. You watched a lot of rugby over the weekend, but the word that I would kind of pull out for this is disjointed. To me, it seemed like a lot of messy games and a lot of, it just felt not quite free-flowing. Did you get that impression when you were looking at a lot of games?
I did a little bit. I think at times the points were definitely lower, I think, across the board. There were either scrappy games or there were one-sided blowouts.
Yeah, that's right. And whether that's, the various mitigating factors like sweat on the ball, rain on the ball, leaves on the track, that type of thing. Wrong type of leaves on the track, and those of you who have been to London will know what we're referring to. But yeah, it just seemed as though there was a lot of mistakes in a lot of games as well. Alright, so let's bounce straight into the Hurricanes-Kings match. We were expecting this to be a fairly big blowout. I'm not sure it kind of panned out that way. I think the score kind of ended up being a fair reflection of the game, but I only saw bits of this, and there's a disturbing book. I don't know if you've seen it, Mossman. It's a film or a book, and it's called We Need to Talk About Kevin. And we analyse his brother to pieces, but we need to talk about Ardie. Good grief. He's playing out of his skin at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, if you change the haircut, one of the runs he had was very Julian-like, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was just barging everybody out of the way. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, let's overlook the fact that it was a forward pass from TJ to Coles.
It was, yeah.
Sumo called it live, and it wasn't even questioned. Didn't even go upstairs for that. But okay, so would you have any other loose forward at the moment over Ardie Savea?
I'm actually shocked that you'd ask me that question. I'm offended.
I'm only
and I'll refuse to answer it.
I'm only going to go with Yako. I thought maybe there's an outside chance that you might put Yako up there.
No, there isn't.
Okay. I'm trying to bring in a level of outside back that may get it. Would you have James Lowe or Ardie Savea? Shooting it back to you, I think you might have. Well, we asked it in different guys last week, didn't we? We asked Julian or James Lowe. How about Ardie and James Lowe?
I'm kind of at the point now where I think he's so far ahead of the other players at that position that he's got to be right up there. And I love James Lowe, but I think you'll find some fairly decent replacements for him if you were to let him go. And chances are I guess put it this way, that the loose forward you're going to replace Ardie with in your team is not going to make up the difference that you would get from finding someone to replace James Lowe. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I agree with that premise. I would like to point out that, Jesus, I've only just looked at the score. Damien McKenzie's 180.5 points. Can you guess what the next points total is for the second place person, who is actually James Lowe?
Probably about 110, maybe.
Yeah, 103.
Right, okay.
He's 80 points ahead, Damien McKenzie.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely bonkers. So is there anyone that you would trade Ardie for now? Let's just take that right to the start. Was there anyone you would actually trade Ardie Savea for? Would you want Folau? Damien McKenzie, I guess, is probably who I should probably ask.
Yeah, I think McKenzie. And I think Folau would be the only other one in the conversation at the moment.
You wouldn't go Barrett? And we'll touch on him in a quick second.
No, I don't think so. I just think that, once again, going back to the position that whichever first five you got is probably going to be doing a similar-ish kind of job. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, I mean, I guess now is as good a time as any to come on to it. A lot of those points that Barrett scored were courtesy of one particular intercept and long distance try.
That's what I was going to ask you. So is this a false dawn, or is this a half decent game for him, or where do you come down on this one?
He was okay.
Yeah.
He was okay. He wasn't amazing with ball in hand. We've seen him play better games, and yeah, like I said, it was just that one blowout at the end, which would have broken a lot of people's, ruined a lot of people's weeks, or made them, depending on whether you had him in their team. And there were another couple like that over this weekend, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And we'll get onto the Sharks game at some point.
And the Highlanders game.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. I wasn't too sure whether this is a function of playing the Kings or that intercept, or whether there was space to do it. So, okay, let's wait and see. But another fellow that we talked about quite significantly is Halaholo. Thoughts on his play?
I love Halaholo.
Yeah.
For me, he's someone you've got to go out and got to target in trades.
I do too.
And I think it's, because at the moment there'll still be people that are thinking, well, I don't know if he's going to get the start. And that's fair, and we don't know that, but I still think it's worth trying to see what you can get to get him back, because if he does get that start, I think you're pretty set up with him in there. So a lot of this is a function, I guess, of playing against the Kings, but I just think moving forward that he's someone that is probably going to be a little bit matchup proof as well. I mean, he scored some decent points here, but it could have been a lot more. Like, he looked better than what those points implied.
So he's only owned in 23.5%. So in the first instance, I would check your waiver wire and put him up there.
If he's on your waiver wire, just absolutely the number one. And if he has been picked up, see what you can get for him. I mean, and this may sound completely crazy, but for me, I think he's right on the edge of maybe being a top 5 midfielder. I think he's that high.
I think there's circumstances there for him. The situation's really good for him, and they're looking for that. And his, I hate to say it, his yin to the yang, right? So, Laumapi, who was exceptionally good in this game as well, is a different type of. He's a wrecking ball. He's a steamroller, whereas Halaholo's got a bit about him. Yep. And they worked quite well together. I think you texted me at one point and just said, look, he looks like he could break it at any point. And he does.
Yep.
He does. So I think there's an opportunity here as well, if you're looking for trades for Halaholo, because the Hurricanes are on a bye next week. So there are going to be managers who are now potentially at 0-5, 1-4, maybe even 2-3, and you're a few games back from your conference and starting to flag away from that wild card spot, who can't afford to have, an a midfielder just sitting there doing nothing on a bye week, and you may be able to get him down for a knockdown amount. I think there's a good opportunity there anyway, and I agree with you. Look, he looked really, really strong. Laumapi as well, though, he clocked up a lot of points. Is that how he's going to score his points, over and through people?
Yeah, definitely. It's only one way for him, basically. So, yeah, I think he'll definitely be solid moving forward. I think you can expect more games like this from him, but a lot of it is opposition dependent, and I think what we're going to see just over the next, for the rest of the season, really, is just matchups becoming way more important.
I agree. I think that's a good call. There's enough of a sample size now to understand when a matchup is going to be a decent one versus one that you may want to avoid. Fafita, long striding Fafita, looks strong in the bits that I saw.
Yeah, definitely another standout. Could have been more as well. It was one where, sort of similar to last week, we joked about him getting into the clear and smiling his way all the way into touch while being tackled. Well, this week he's through into the gap, almost a carbon copy really, except he forgot that there was somebody behind him. He just slapped the ball out of his hands. So once again, it could easily have been 10 points more.
And you used a key phrase there, I think, it's carbon copy. I think that's what he does. I think that's his MO. I think he sits on the channels, and he's supposed to be that person that the Kieran Reid mould, the one that sits out in that outside centre role and does the busts and gets the hands free enough to get the offloads to the fast running outside backs or midfielders. So I think there's a lot there for Fafita.
Yep, definitely, and it's slightly different, I guess, even from the Kieran Reid role, where it's not like he's just sort of hanging out there in the channel just to carry. He's actually getting it in one-on-one situations and taking senses on the outside.
He's got top end. He got
sure
top
does,
end.
yeah.
No, it's really good. I guess it'd be remiss not to talk about the Kings. They had some decent performances in there. I think they're a little bit better than perhaps what the scores suggest. Their defence, it quits every now and again, but for the most part, I think it's trending in the right direction. But in terms of fantasy rugby, Louis Fichet was pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, he was. But I think it was also one of those games. I mean, he was either an intercept or it wasn't an intercept, but a longish sort of range try, which, and you can't count on. Look, I thought he looked alright, but for me, he's still not on the radar. You'll get a game like this out of him maybe once every 5 games, and that's not somebody that you're going to hold on to, really.
Yeah, fair enough. I did put him on the radar, only because, to me, he's a little bit like a Daniel Murray for the Cheetahs, in that he's a little bit greedy, and he will take it to the line a little bit, and he will try and knock a kick over from 65 metres into the teeth of the Wellington Southerly. That type of thing for him. So I think there is value for him in fantasy rugby for that point, but it is only for your backup fly half. So if you're carrying someone like a Kurt Coleman or someone, I'd prefer Louis Fichet. King's front row, how did that theory get on?
Well, he almost made you look like a genius at one point.
Sure.
Got clear and nearly scored. So, yeah, look, he's got something about him. Maturo?
Yeah, that's it.
Muratelli, something along those lines. Yeah. So that there could be something to that, I guess.
Yeah, okay, all right. Just something to keep an eye on. I know they scored okay, but you never really tell unless you've seen the game how well it goes. And I mean, I don't think we need to talk about the Hurricanes front row, do we? Dan Coles was looking pretty loose when I saw him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Any more from this game?
If you're desperate for a midfielder, Shane Gates occasionally looks okay, but you'd have to be pretty desperate.
Okay, all right. And I do like how Sumo Stevenson pronounces Stefan Wattermeyer correctly. Check it out next time. Chiefs Force, how did your beloved Force go this week?
They were disappointing.
Yeah, disappointing. Actually, before we get on to the game itself, we did find out after the podcast, or was it after? I'm pretty sure it was after the podcast, John O'Lance is actually out for 6 weeks. And that was 2 weeks ago. So we were scratching around for why on earth Peter Grant was playing. And there's your answer. Quite why Luke Morahan isn't playing, I still don't know, but I'm guessing we're going to find out he's out for 6 weeks and another 3 weeks. It's a bit of a rant here. The New Zealand rugby media, it's so new when it comes to having to analyse rugby and injuries and suspensions and things like this. If you were in America or in the UK or anywhere else, this would be, it's not front page news, but it would be accessible at pretty much every site you could go to, right? It's just, this guy's injured, it's out for 6.5 weeks, he's done it this way, he's seeing this doctor, and this is his wife who takes him there in the taxi, it's all these there's so much detail on injuries, it's just not good here. But into the game itself, I feel like we talk about it forever, but Damien McKenzie, goodness gracious.
The biggest surprise for me in this game actually was, just to focus on something else for a second, was that in such a high scoring and high fantasy point scoring game, was that Brad Weber got so few points.
Yeah.
That was the thing that surprised me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd put him in a couple of my teams, and I'd seen the score, and I saw a few tweets online, and I was thinking, okay, that's good. I've got it on the tally box to watch a little bit later, but I was expecting to see big points when I looked up my teams, but no, what was it, 5 or 6 points or something? Yeah, it's quite surprising. So, but Damien McKenzie, it was actually the thing that made me laugh during this game was that he missed quite a few kicks. Right.
At one point, he was lining one up, and he must have started to think to himself, maybe I'll not do the smiling routine because it's not working for me. And he kind of had this really serious look on his face as he was lining it up, and then kind of shook his head to shake it off and went back to the smile and then sort of nailed it. It was quite a weird moment. Like bad thoughts, good thoughts, happy thoughts. Yeah, shake it off. Oh, no, don't. Am I going to smile? Yeah. No. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'll do it. But, it was pretty wayward with the boot, considering that there were 7 tries scored in this game and only 3 converted. One of them was by Stephen Donald. Right, I was going to ask, so none of them are in front then enough for Cruden to come in and take the kicking?
I guess we probably should focus on the positive. Chaz Ngatai.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's good, so I guess when I look at these games, I sort of think to myself, how can we most help people that are listening? And telling them that Chaz Ngatai is good is obviously not helping anybody. Right? I mean, there were a lot of moments in this game that were pretty to watch. I think some of the takeaways for me was Michael Leach was really strong. Turned the ball over a lot, always involved, and quite a good link player as well. Mm-hmm. And he does a few other little bits and pieces too, like he puts the odd chip kick through or grubber kick through for players to run onto when he's close to the line. So I think he's definitely somebody that if you are looking for a number 2 loose forward, I think he should be someone that you should look at.
Okay. You talked about Brad Weber in such a high-scoring game getting not a hell of a lot of points. A player that I think we thought might go all right was Sam McNichol. Did it just go all James Lowe's way? Or
it seemed to. It just didn't go his way. He just had very few touches. Didn't do a whole lot with the touches he did get. I think it was just sort of one of those days, but obviously he's not someone that you're counting on week to week. We thought he'd be a good spot start. He wasn't. I think that's probably the Sam McNichol experiment over for the moment.
Yeah, right. Back to Chaz Ngatai. Who would you trade for him? Just looking at midfield. Would you trade any midfielder for Charlie Ngatai right now?
No.
Fekitoa?
No.
Moala?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't even think of any two more than that. Those are the only two I thought you might bite on.
No. And those would be the two that you'd offer, but no.
Okay, fair enough. I'll put a pin on that for a second because I've got a couple of trades I want to chat to you about a little bit later. For the Force, Massaray was scored quite well. Was this beating 6 defenders in one move in a 40-metre run, or was this something that happened over the course of the game?
No, he made a couple of breaks, I think, from memory. Was a bit more involved, and got out into open space. And he was doing it by beating tackles and going through the line. So I'd say the Massarewa experiment is not completely over.
Yeah, sure.
I think he still looks, and a team that goes side to side, as they tend to do, and don't have a lot of punch, he is somebody that provides a little bit of a spark and the opportunity for a line break. So I think that, especially when the Force get back home, I think he'll be okay. Okay,
all right. So Tony Pulu came on and scored a try. I think it might have been his first touch from what I've been reading. Is this the thing? Because he was talked up in pre-season and had a decent ITM Cup, and I know there's certainly been a couple of people that have questioned, where is Tony Pulu? I guess we have to factor in the Fish wasn't playing in the 23, and obviously Sam McNichol's there as well. But what do you read into Tony Pulu?
I wouldn't read anything into it at this point.
Really?
No, it's just too. I mean, it's not that he looked bad.
No.
I mean, I guess the Force ran out of steam towards the end of the game, and all the Chiefs subs that came on sort of made hay to some extent, of which he was one. So, I mean, there's not a lot I can tell you other than that. Yeah, he got on the field and scored a try, and that's great. I'm not willing to sell the farm to pick him up.
Crowded backfield, as they say.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything more from Chiefs Force?
No.
Okay. Rebels Highlanders then. Highlanders coming out fairly convincing in the against Rebels, but from Fantasy Rugby, I think it's pretty devastating news for Tom English. It looks like he potentially could be out for the season, the knee. And Placid and Tammy Ellison came off as well. They're in doubt for the next weekend against the Waratahs. So certainly the Tom English one is a buzzkill. And I know I texted you at one point and said, well, why the hell taking English and Placid off? I was actually trying to sneakily do it. I was taking the wife out for a bit of a nice Easter dinner, and we had a nice restaurant that certainly shouldn't have iPhone checks on the phone going through it. But I went to the toilet and checked, and I saw that they'd come off. And I hadn't seen much more detail, and I was like, well, that's great. There's two players that we thought were really going to crush it this weekend. It was English and Placid, and they got such limited points that I couldn't figure out why. But yeah, it turns out it's injury.
I could tell you that Placid was an absolute liability in this game.
Really?
Yeah. There was bombs away on him, and he just was not dealing with it at all. Put a couple down, and by the end he was actually staying clear of them. He was willing to let them bounce rather than have a go.
Oh, goodness me.
So he got the hook, and Reece Hodge came on and looked much better. Really solid under the high ball. Didn't do a whole lot else, but definitely diffused that situation, and it was killing them at one point.
And they didn't have a kick at goal post that, did they? To see if we could find out if it was the Polish Baker or Placid kicking.
That's
the goals,
right. Yeah, I was actually watching it, hoping that there'd be some kind of score, just so we could get some sort of feel for what this meant. But that didn't happen, so I guess it was just left with a bit of a question mark there.
That's interesting. So you obviously didn't see an injury. They didn't refer to an injury on the comms, but from what I've read, Placid did get injured and he's out for a wee bit.
I think it might be a heart problem.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering, if it's someone's being a little bit. Yeah, if he's had an absolute shocker, it's easier to say he didn't get the hook. It's easier to say he's picked up his shoulder. He's in doubt for next weekend.
I mean, how many weeks do you think he'll be out with injured pride? I suppose it depends what grade, right?
That's right. I've been out for the last 10 years. So. Elliot Dixon, did he come on at any certain time? I didn't actually check to see what his points go, but did he come on?
He did come on, yeah, and he looked a little bit angry.
Did he?
He'd been benched and he did snot a couple of people, so
right, nice.
Yeah, I think you'll see him back in there from time to time. Sure. Rob Thompson put up decent points,
okay.
And I think this could be something moving forward. I mean, he won't every week get Jonah Placid dropping a high ball right into his plate.
Oh, sure.
Which was, he was the beneficiary of Mr. Placid. So, and Patrick Osborne. Now, the other thing, I guess the thing that's interesting, and this is another one of those ones that would have either killed you or made you weak, that kind of intercept, didn't actually put up massive points if you take that away. So that was it must have been close to an 80, 70 metre intercept maybe.
Yep.
Which straight away is 12 to 13 points. I think he only put up 20. So I guess that would have counted as a clean break as well.
I saw that highlight, and I saw when he got up, and you could clearly see he hadn't played for a couple of weeks. I think he actually said, "I'm knackered." You could see him mouth it to Ben Smith.
Yeah.
He's just say he was doubled over there.
Yeah. And just as an aside, it's nice to see Jay Wilson on the score sheet for the Highlanders again.
Sure is. Goldie's Corner, was it? How did the rest of the Rebels go? I know there's not many of them troubling the point scorer, but is there any highlights out of there? How did Sean McMahon go?
I think it was back down to earth a little bit for Sean McMahon. I actually thought he was upstaged by Adam Thompson.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I think when we talked about them last week, I think the suggestion was that perhaps it wasn't quite as big a gap as the points scored so far this season suggested, and maybe this was reverting a little bit to the mean. Outside of that, I thought Dom Shipley was actually all right and was a little bit unlucky. There could have been more points in this for him on a different night, with perhaps players around him playing a bit better. So, not worried about him.
First big game that the Rebels have come up against, the first decent opposition since they got thrashed by the Bulls. And you just wonder if it kind of shows a little bit that maybe they aren't the breakout that everyone thought they were going to be.
No, I think the commentators actually did point that out at one stage, that based on who they'd played, that this might be a bit of a reality check, and maybe this is who the Rebels are. Sure.
And they didn't make any mention around how long Faddis or Naholo or anyone might be back for. Haven't seen anything.
No, we didn't get any insights from the medical team on the commentary box.
Sure, nice. Okay, anything more for Rebels Highlanders?
Nope, don't think so.
Okay. Suns Bulls. First question, I guess, from a fantasy rugby. Tion Skoman, how did he fare out there?
Scored some decent points, but also made a few mistakes. Kicked one out on the full from a kick-off. Also did the David Knox, if you remember that.
No, I don't. Sorry, no, go on.
Don't you? Trying to pull off too much territory with a penalty touch finder and kicking it dead.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
you don't remember that?
There's that done Dunedin.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess a bit of a mixed bag, purely from a rugby point of view, made a few mistakes.
Right.
But scored okay. Kicking was all right. Ball in hand, didn't have a whole lot to do, but yeah, I guess he was tidy enough.
I've watched a little bit of this on as I come home from said night out, and I had a note here that it was saying that I think we need to be a little bit careful around who ploughing too much into Tione Schkoman versus Francois Brummer, because the outsides for the Bulls just didn't get anything in that first half. It was a pretty dour. I think Haaland had like 2 or 3 points in the first half, and he just wasn't getting the ball, and Creel wasn't getting the ball either.
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking for some evidence that Schkoman was going to be the guy moving forward, well, you didn't get it here.
No, not at all. Not at all. Shame about Warwick Haaland. Pretty brutal collision of his.
It was, yeah.
So I've got a question for you. I know you watched it then. So, do you think he was knocked out? That's the first question. Do you think he was concussed?
No, I don't think so. But I did wonder whether he had a broken jaw.
Literally what I was thinking. We haven't talked about this, and I haven't presented any notes. That's what I've got here as well, because everybody is saying that he's been concussed and knocked out. But for me, when he got hit, he got spun around, and he looked up to where if the try had been scored and still trying to function. When you're knocked out, your arms go to your side, you hit the ground, you don't do anything unless you're Dean Lonergan and do a shuffle. You know, that's about it. Yeah. Honestly, and I wondered because that looked like a classic broken jaw. It looked like it just collided straight with it.
Yep. Top of the head into the jaw, and at one point I did see the medical staff actually sort of testing his bottom teeth almost in a way.
Right.
And it looks like maybe that's where the blood was coming from as well. So
sure.
that was, interesting. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and I guess from a fantasy rugby, that is not good news that we both saw the same thing. Because I think you'd prefer if he was concussed and got his bell rung and he could come back potentially next week if he'd cleared all the protocols. But broken jaw is out a little bit longer. Okay, Yamada scored a cracking try. Sunwolves actually play okay, don't they? When they get that, they're a bit like a miniature Jaguars, really, aren't they? They start throwing the ball around, they get a bit of confidence, and it starts to stick. Yeah. This was a great try.
Yep. No, there is actually some talent in the team. And, I'm starting to buy into the Yamada thing because play just seems to go his way a lot. I don't know if it's a tactical thing or if it's subconscious, whatever it is, that they just run to his wing. The other winger who we talked about, Lola here, last week was just anonymous.
Really? Okay.
He was invisible, but Yamada was involved a lot, and it's not like he has to come in off his wing to get involved. It just runs his way. They go out to his wing.
Right.
And he looks, I'm sort of coming around to him. I think he looks decent. There was a bit of a strip club element to this, though. I looked at his points and saw that he had 5 clean breaks, and I could only remember a couple. So I'm just wondering whether maybe on some of these, that particular incident, I guess we're talking about for that try, whether they counted it as more than 1 clean break because they broke through the initial line, got to the next defender.
Yeah.
There's a pop pass to him who went past that defender, and then so maybe it counted for more than 1 clean break. That's the only thing I can think of, because I'm pretty sure watching it that I just can't recall there being that many.
Sure.
Yeah, just an interesting aside anyway.
So I've got to note that I think you're going to have to ride the odd bad result with him. But I think, as you said, strip club, I think he's got value as well, though. I think he topped up those points. Certainly worth rostering. He's got 9, 30 odd, 3, 30 odd in Gameweek. So there's some big points in there, and I think if you can have him as your third outside back, and if you get 30 points, I don't know, maybe 2 times out of 10, I think you're happy enough with that, because he might win you that Gameweek in that third outside back position.
Yep, because there's probably not too many that you're looking at around that position who are going to put up a 30 ever.
No, that's right, exactly.
And he's already done it twice.
Yeah, indeed. One kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on it is just let's see how they fare away from home. They haven't played a hell of a lot of rugby away from home yet.
Yeah.
What else goes for this game? Who are we looking at?
Well, one of the key things about this game, and you mentioned earlier about sticky conditions, this was played in Singapore with the roof closed. It seemed like it was almost like a hothouse. It just seemed super slippery. It definitely brought both teams down. I mean, it was reasonably high scoring if you look just at the scoring on the points on the board, but I think in terms of fantasy points, it sort of brought everybody down.
Yeah, sure.
There weren't a lot of, there wasn't a whole lot of action, I guess, other than some of those, the try, for instance. So not a whole lot of takeaways, I guess. Ulingo getting on the score sheet, no way was that a try, in my opinion.
Sure.
I don't quite know how they managed to get to that decision, but that doesn't matter. But good to see him coming up with the dab afterwards as well.
I did see that. I saw the dab. I wondered if anyone picked up that.
Yeah. So really not a lot of other takeaways from this game. I think probably the other highlight for this was I don't know if you saw, there was a holy moly, the line-out mix-up. It was a classic one. Basically, Sunwolves throw in and Moley's there. He's got his lifter behind him. It's one of those ones where they go backwards as a fake and then come forward. Came forward, got to a certain point, stopped. Moley literally turns around to see if the lifter's still there, and the ball hits him in the back of the head.
Oh, that's good.
It was brilliant.
That's good. Minty's moment.
Yeah.
I think we were hoping for a little bit more from your loose forwards playing the Sunwolves theory. So the Arno Boter, people that were scratching around, I know I certainly was, and hoping for a bit more from Janus Kirsten as well, but maybe it was to do with the conditions and, as you say, a little bit hot and sweaty, but I mean, there wasn't massive scoring outside of Yamada for this. 2CPC went well again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're expecting a little bit more from those guys. Okay, anything more from Sunwolves Bulls?
No.
Alright. Now, the next game chronologically is Brumbies Cheetah, but I want to get your test your temperature. Do you think this should be a match of the day game or the Reds Waratahs?
I thought Brumbies Cheetahs was an absolute whistle fest. So, Sharks Crusaders, we talked earlier about whether we thought that would be an open game or the arm wrestle. Fairly obvious, do you think, which one it was?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually one of the most one-sided contests I've seen in a long, long time. The Sharks' new defensive coach is working wonders, but it just isn't sustainable. That they seem to hold themselves in games, which is really good, but there's just no attacking. There's just no attacking game plan there. I read a really interesting article saying that the Crusaders play side to. This particular game was the Crusaders side to side plan was specifically game planned for the big Sharks forwards. They didn't like running around, so get them to the edges, which is kind of like saying even a stopwatch is right twice a day, right? This is the Crusaders game plan every single time. It's just Blackadder side to side. So it's like, yeah, got it right. That's right, game plan worked perfectly.
So they obviously had not taken the time to watch any previous Crusaders
games.
That's
right, yeah. Which doesn't surprise me, actually. So, I don't know what your take is, but AJ Fenter and Warren Brozzy, a terrible sideline comments man, or colour men, or whatever they're called. I'm not sure I've listened to them before, but they're a really, really tough listen. And I'm not even sure I'm coming from a position of strength, but I don't get paid or paid handsomely if anyone's watched the post-match interview and saw the size of Warren Brosnahan's watch holding the microphone. But yeah, goodness me, it was a tough watch.
Tell me about David Havili.
Yeah, okay. So he looked really good at 15. I think him getting carded was the correct decision. I think he was a little bit unlucky that he got pulled up where it is, but it was right underneath. He almost took out the AR at the same time, so I don't think he had many options there.
It was quite a funny incident, was it? Because they were sort of, you could see when the refereeing team got their heads together and they were debating it, and they were talking about whether there was no arms in the tackle. Like, this is not a tackle. The ball is about 25 metres away. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And then Reed came over at one point as well. So the reason this actually got dusted up was I can't remember who was on the ground. It was the Sharks player.
It was Andy Ellis.
Yeah, but who was the Sharks player that tackled him?
Oosterhuizen.
Yeah, so it was Oosterhuizen came in and tackled Andy Ellis just after Andy Ellis had passed the ball.
It was legit.
It was absolutely legit. And Reed come in and goes, "You can tackle a halfback now, can you?" And the ref was like, "Yep, you've always been able to tackle a halfback." I think I knew what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah. It reminded me, actually, there's quite a funny YouTube clip of Andrew Hoare when he's captaining must be captaining the
Hurricanes. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. and there's a penalty for somebody having a late hit on Dan Carter. Yep. You probably know the one I came in. He's talking to the referee. He goes, "Oh, we're not allowed to tackle Carter now."
Yeah, that's good.
As if it was a new rule.
That's right. Yeah, it's good. The IRB's come up with one. Back to Havili. So I think he looked particularly good at fullback. I underrated him a little bit more, and maybe they got a little bit more ball than I thought they would because the Sharks kicked it back to them. I think the territory was 70%, possession was 60%, so it was all Sharks. But on Havili specifically, so talk at this at the same time with Richie Mo'unga. So he missed a lot of kicks here, and a lot of kicks that I think Blackadder would expect him to take. Now, Dodolo took the easiest one at the end, which I thought was pretty odd. It seemed like that might be a good time to try and get Richie Mo'unga's confidence back because it was a sitter, but either way, Nadolo took the last kick. So they took his duties off him, but I wonder if, and I read an article just today actually saying that it's still Richie Mo'unga's jobs for kicking, but that they're starting to think that Havili might take the long range ones like he did at Tasman. And I think the inference there from Blackadder was that Richard Mo'unga, as Brozzy was calling him, might be losing a little bit of technique, trying to get his distance, and it's flowing over into his shorter kick. So he's got that bad technique coming to his shorter ones. So I think they're going to try and find a range for Richard and see if Havili can manage the longer kicks. So that's a long way of saying I think Havili's got, if he gets started, I think there's certainly some value in him.
Okay. He just needs to keep his head down, apparently. That's all you ever need to do.
Or Sean Fitzpatrick, the only way to actually win a rugby match is to pile big numbers into the breakdown. That's another key one that a lot of managers seem to overlook.
So with David Havili, I just made a note asking whether he was the new Caleb Ralph. Do you think there's maybe an element that he's in a really good position but isn't necessarily a great player? Maybe.
No, he's certainly in a good position, and it's in really good circumstance that he's going to get a lot of ball, and I think that backline is starting to come good. Crotty coming in there will be a little bit better, and Fonatere looks a bit better as a 13. I think that's fair. I think he's got a little bit more about him than Caleb. He's got a bit more pedigree as in New Zealand 20s and a bit of background to him as well. So I think there is a little bit more there, but I'm not quite sure anyone really knows what position he should be in. But if he's taking kicks, and if he keeps on playing like this, and they're playing the Lions next week, which, that's going to be at Highveld taking long distance kicks as well, and just the counter-attacking play that both teams play, I think there could be something there.
So anybody else for the Crusaders that you want to pick out in particular?
Not really. I think Johnny McNichol he looks a good player. He looks like he's back to a little bit more of what we know in the fitness. So it's going to be really interesting to see who he plays against, who he plays for the Crusaders against the Lions next week. But I'd be more inclined to think it is Johnny McNichol, and it could have been a whole lot better as well had it not been for the Fonz stepping into touch and Jaco Pipa correctly going upstairs, and the protocol seemed okay. Still frustrates me a little bit that it can't be done. It can be done after the ref has made the decision not to go to the TMO. It seems like all you're going to get is a replay for the home ground, just replaying something that happened 16 phases ago until the ref looks it up. So I think there's something there as well. But Johnny McNichol looked really good. Kieran Reid again was immense, and it wasn't just his try. His all-round contribution was good. His clearing out at rucks was really, really strong as well. And we kind of touched on it. You're probably going to get 80 minutes out of him, and on that 79 minutes is when you got, 75 minutes is when you got the payback for starting him.
So, for the Sharks in Vovo, I'm assuming that we can expect well-constructed tries like his every week from here on. 16
phase play tries, yeah, absolutely. I've just put one note here, and I don't think we need to say it's just Mvovo scored 2 very Mvovo-like tries. Intercept, pick a ball up off a scramble. Yeah, no, it was very much almost what they call a smash and grab, isn't it, for them, and the Sharks nearly pulled it off. And to be honest, they probably should have. Now, I don't know where you come down on this. The Willie LaRude offside from Cobus Reinach's kick. They only replayed it once.
That's right.
It wasn't from a side-on view.
Yeah.
And to me, he looked behind. And it didn't look like it was particularly close. Now, I've seen Tony Johnston does a segment on Prime called Rugby Nation about 5:30 on a Sunday night, and they go through a lot of the highlights on that as well. And he was praising Jaco Peyper for the dealing of the Havili incident, the clear communication. He was telling him how it works. He was praising the TMO call, how we went upstairs and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And he said that was more communicating to the people listening than anything else. But he also praised this call, he saw something out of the corner of his eye, so he went upstairs and the TMO came back and they got it right. So congratulations. But I think that's wrong. I don't know, did you see it? Did he look offside to you?
I couldn't believe that they made a decision that quickly.
Absolutely.
So when I was watching it, and I tend to fast forward through the breaks, I'd gone back and I'd seen it, and then I'd fast forwarded expecting the try to be awarded and play would move on and there'd be a restart from halfway.
Yeah.
So I was pretty surprised when it wasn't. So I guess that tells you what I was thinking. But I mean, I'm not saying I'm 100% right on that, but at least it deserved a little bit more attention.
And the other thing as well, I think and I slowed this down a few times, the way that Jaco went backwards. When he looked at the replay, it looked to me like he was jogging out to where he was going to mark where the conversion needed to be taken from, and he stopped kind of this half jog stop and said, sorry, what, say that again, kind of thing. It's like, oh, so he's, okay. And then he went back, scrum, wherever the kick was from. So, I haven't seen too much upcry or uproar or outcry or whatever it is, but I'm a little bit surprised by that. All right, that's pretty much all I had for this game. Did you have anything more?
Just that Coach Gary Gold interviewed after the game. He looked like a Russian billionaire on holiday in the south of France.
How many buttons did he have up?
He had buttons. It had to be 3 minimum, and there was a lot of chest hair on display. He just needs a gold medallion, and we'll change his name to Solid Gold because it was disco.
Maybe that's why he doesn't have the chains. Like he just can't have anything gold.
Just be a step too far.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Stormers, Jaguars. I felt a bit sorry for the Jags here. I was sort of rooting for them, hoping that they'd get that first home win. They're a funny team, aren't they?
They are. They were their own worst enemies though in this game. They committed 1,000 handling errors and mistakes, but they were in it. I'm not sure why they benched Cordero, but it does have a knock-on effect, not only just with the team, but Nicolas Sanchez as well. Those two kind of play together. The Cordero's that player that just kind of sniffs around the ruck or hangs around Nicolas Sanchez to get an offload or behind the back. And the same thing when Hernandez is playing there. He just kind of sniffs that area. He's not like a wing on a string, as they say, who runs tram lines and that's his role. Cordero kind of pops up everywhere. So that had a knock-on with Sanchez, but that's the second time now that Sanchez has been yellow carded. I don't know if the second time makes it a pattern, but it concerns me a lot that a fly half can get binned like this twice in a season, let alone once.
Yeah, so just on Sanchez, I mean, has he dropped a bit in your estimation?
Yeah, he has. He has a long, long way. And he has to win my trust now. So and you have to play matchups, so you can't take this as but let's look at it a vacuum. I would start, I'd even start TCPC ahead of him.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I would. We haven't seen a big game from him yet. We haven't seen, let alone getting consistent output. I think his average might be 10 or 15 points. That's Kurt Goldman territory.
It is.
At least TCPC is up around that kind of 15 to 25 mark. I think, he concerns me a lot, and it's concerning me what I'm hearing now as well around resting a lot of players for the Australasian part of their tour coming over here. Now I'll touch on that in a wee bit, but yeah.
Yeah, he's not getting a whole lot of shots at goal, and then when he does, he misses a fair share of them, which is not a recipe for scoring points.
No, and one of the reasons he's not getting is the Jaguars' style of play. They've given a lot of players a license to take quick taps, and also to kick for those corners because they know they've got Sonny Bill Creevy and that forward pack is fairly dominant and good at those set piece type tries. So some of these kicks are actually being taken in for corners, but then he did miss a conversion right on half time when the the Jaguars scored. I'm pretty sure it was right on half-time, the one before that, which was quite crucial in the whole wash-up because it would have tied the score, or got it within 3 points. If they got a penalty, it would have tied the scores up. So, bad miss for him.
Yeah, so, I mean, the Jags, I think, generally pretty poor, but were there any sort of players that stood out that you take away for fantasy purposes? Yeah,
Lasana. I like the look of him. Loose forward, very good carrying the ball. And if the players that the Jags are considering resting as part of this policy that they've got, he'll get a bit of a run. So I think Rodrigo Baez will be in there, Matera and Lasana are probably the three that are going to be there and thereabouts starting for the Jags. And he did look really, really good when he came on, and he hasn't played a hell of a lot up to now. But I think he's probably the one shining light you'd look at for the Jaguares.
Not a lot else to say about them, really, is there?
No, just on the resting. So the players that we've heard are Sonny Bill Creevy, Issa Leguizamon Hernandez, who's already injured anyway, and I'm not sure he's going to go on the Australasian tour. And Tuchelet is another player that I've heard potentially could be rested for the first half of the Australasian tour. So a little bit of a concern. One upside from that, it could well be Manuel Montero time, and potentially moving Cordero back to 15. They've tried that this season. I'm not a fan of that, and it's not just because of fantasy rugby as well and his output. At 15, you need to be fairly responsible. You need to have really, really strong positioning and communication and understand where, and basically direct everyone in front of you. Cordero isn't that player. He likes, as just touched on before, he likes to pop up wherever he wants to be, and putting him at 15 just kind of hamstrings him. It's almost like tying him down that, he has to play here. Whereas his game is popping up, behind a ruck somewhere, or, someone's just done a 1-2 cut and all of a sudden he's running down the trams in the middle. So, yeah, I think, Montero could be good going forward as a player coming in, but I'd also just check to see where Cordero is going to play.
So a very Stormers-like performance, I guess you would say. Very Stormer-esque. We talked quite a bit about Kurt Coleman towards the end of last week. What did you think of his performance?
The note that I've got here, and I've got a few other notes that I've written about a few other players, so I didn't want to spend too much time on Kurt Coleman. I just said he had his customary 10 to 15 points. Yeah.
He's a bit too lateral for a fly half, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He's not square on to the defence.
No, the shoulders aren't square when he's running to him.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I noticed that same thing. So, yeah, I think you're right. He just is what he is. Noche. This guy just looks like an athlete, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah, he does. There was that one break he did right down the middle, and he's thinking about passing it most of the time, and then he realised he was pulling away from the guys chasing him. He's like, "Oh, hang on, I've just realised I've only got the fullback in front of me." So no, look, he looks really, really strong, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he wasn't subbed when Berger came on. I think it might have been Khaleesi. No, I'm not 100% sure about that.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But that'll be good signs going forward if that's the case, because I think he just looks like an athlete. Another player that does look like an athlete is Leo Zass.
Yeah.
He should have scored 2 tries. I don't know, there's something about this pitch. It makes fast players not look very fast. And I know he's quick because I've seen it, but he just didn't have that burst. When he was trying to finish off those 2 tries, he was just trying to run a couple of angles and just kind of ran into them and got tackled. He didn't try to fend or go around them, or he just tried to go through a gap. But he looks really, really good. I've really hoped that Fleck sticks with him and sticks with him on that wing as well, because he was one very un-Stormers-like player that adds quite a bit of spark. Same as, well, not really same. I guess Damien Delende is a different beast altogether, but he's quick on his feet and he's very skillful as well. And it seemed as though that the Stormers, quite rightfully, it highlighted exactly what the Jaguares like doing. They like to play with the ball, so let them do that in their own half. Let them make the mistakes and we'll just capitalise on it and pick off 3 points when we need to and score a few points. But a question I got back for you. Who do you think the top 5 midfielders are at the moment? Just on total, not on average, but on total. And we talked about, obviously, the top one.
Yeah. I actually know this because I looked this up. I told you I was prepared. So
very prepared. Good job.
Yeah, so Zas is second. I think that would come as a surprise to a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he scored, just off the top of my head, something around 20, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
In this game.
Yep.
And that's counting exactly as you said, that he blew a couple of chances that you would expect on another day for him to take. So I've got Zas down in that similar kind of category to Hala Holo. As a player that I think you need to go out and target, because I think there's that uncertainty about his position in the team, and also the fact that he's kind of been flying under the radar, and I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised to see him at number 2 on that total points list. I still think that you might be able to sneak a trade for him, and you might be able to do it for perhaps a big name who's fallen a little bit in estimations, and I'll throw Karevi's name out there.
Sure.
Probably come on to him, but I think that, he's another guy in that same category.
No, I agree. And the other 3 are Beale, Venter, and English. So
English is probably gone.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to suggest when we talk about the Reds Waratahs that Beale might be gone, but hey ho.
Okay, so Colby, I guess he beat his customary 6 defenders on one run.
Yeah, that's the other player I've got here to make a note of, because it's exactly that. He's kicking the ball a lot. It's like Justin Marshall when he commentates the Crusaders game. He just goes way overboard against the Crusaders to try and avoid any accusation of bias. Yeah, and it's like Colby wants to prove a point that is, he doesn't just have to beat 16 players on with one move, which would be pretty special. He wants to prove that he's got that kicking. But he got most of his points in that one try, because he did skip quite a few players and left them grasping air, and then just found an opening and went over.
I kind of felt like he got a pretty good block from Coleman, though.
Yeah, that's right.
That was not mentioned at all.
Yeah,
so
that's right. It was.
Yeah.
I think with Colby, though, just to finish up on him, I think a lot of this came down to the Stormers playing the Jaguars, in that let them play in their own half, and let Idzabeth do the damage, because that guy's a beast.
Yeah.
Play to your strengths. He's going to crush you. He's going to run over the top of you. There's probably, what's the guy's name? Lavanelli, the lock.
Lavanini.
He's probably the only other player on the pitch who's potentially got the physicalness to match Idzabeth, but Idzaneth was just bullying people. At one point, I think Sanchez tried to have a run at him, in terms of tried to tackle him. And they do this kind of grass cutter thing, the Jaguars, which they're slowly getting pulled up on and getting really, really close. But yeah, it almost put Sanchez out for a couple of months with that shoulder on Idzabeth.
So, Idzabeth, you're right. Just a beast, really. So the only other thing I noticed in this game, and I guess it was the same when you were watching it, was the lack of English commentary in the beginning. And then, which was fine, listen to it in Spanish, and it was kind of amusing. But what happened is, about 10 minutes before half time, they cut to somebody who obviously, my guess is he's probably the press officer.
He was, something. Yeah, that's right.
Was he?
Actually, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw tweeted. It was someone.
I was just a guess that he was a press officer. He's obviously somebody within the Jaguars organisation that spoke a bit of English, was just inserted into the commentary, and oh my God, he was terrible.
It was one of the funniest things I've seen in a long, long time. He was so not prepared. You can tell he had never commentated a game before in his life. He was brilliant. If you've got a chance to look back on those last 10 minutes before the second, because in the second half they brought that Hugh fella from the South African lad. He was obviously the South African commentary that was coming through then that they'd managed to hijack on.
Yeah. No, but this guy, for what was already not a great game, he just managed to take the interest out of it completely.
That's right. And they had the balance. They had the balance wrong of stadium noise into commentary box as well. And quite often you see that, and it's really frustrating. You don't get. It's not a difficult thing to do, to get the stadium noise and to get the atmosphere coming through, and make it sound, because that game just sounded dead. They didn't have the noise coming in, and then they had old mate, the press officer, or whoever it was.
Because I think at least if we'd had the Spanish commentary, maybe when they scored that try, we might have had
that's right.
But this guy was like De La Fuente scores. He scores a try.
He scores to try.
He scores.
Passes to the man. Boom goes the dynamite.
I am so excited.
It was great.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
No, that was all from me, mate. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so enough of that, and old mate, the press officer. Reds Waratahs. I quite like having a Sunday afternoon game. I'm not sure it's perfect for the South African folks, but it's nice for once for people on this side of the world to be able to watch the crucial matchup or the final matchup in your fantasy rugby draft and watch the points coming through. We don't usually get that because we usually do a 4 a.m. game or a 6 a.m. game. And I like having this Jags and I like having this kind of Sunday afternoon game because, yeah, you can actually watch it knowing that your game relies on it.
Yeah, no, totally. It was actually pretty cool to be able to, not have to, I guess, wake up in the morning and know that the matchup was decided.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I know you do a similar thing to me in that you record most of them and see if you can get, say, caught up a couple of games before you watch the Jags games live. But yeah, it's not the same as being able to literally check at the same time as your points are coming through as accrued watching a game on TV. But about Reds Waratahs particularly, so I didn't watch a hell of a lot of this game. I believe it got a little bit wet in the second half, and that had a lot to do with it. Or was this just an Australian derby? A couple of guys slugging it out, a couple of teams slugging it out.
Probably a little bit of both. I think it was quite slippery, but it was also a very niggly game. There were plenty of incidents in this one, off the ball stuff. So, yeah, I guess the first thing to note happened before the kickoff, and that was Chris Fiatau. CFS. There you go.
Yeah. Chris Fiatau. Yep.
Yeah, CFS. Let's just stick with that. So he was a late scratch, which obviously you hate to see, and I'm sure there would be the odd person that was playing him, and that's always disappointing.
Yep.
The other thing was, for the Reds anyway, welcome back to Liam Gill. He was actually pretty good. Probably didn't necessarily translate into fantasy points, but was definitely involved with ball in hand and was a threat at the breakdown to turn the ball over. So I think they'll be better with him in the team. Yep. Whether he becomes a great fantasy option, it's probably too early to say, but I'd say he'll be an improvement anyway.
So I saw Rob Simmons say a comment after the match, or on a clip somewhere, I can't remember where I saw it, but he was talking about the mistake that they made just before half time, in that they should go into the sheds with a lead, kick the ball out, don't give them an opportunity, but they were fairly hard on attack. I think it was they were down in the 22 or somewhere near it on attack. I'm assuming they were just trying to milk a penalty or get a penalty and see if they can get into that way. I didn't think it was that bad that they were on attack. I think you just kicked the ball out at that point.
Yep.
Anyway, question I had. So Jed Holloway, I don't know if it was too many Easter eggs I had, but was he playing number 8 or blindside?
No, he was playing 8.
Did he have 6 on his back or 8 on his back?
He had 8 on his back, yeah.
Okay, alright.
I'm pretty sure he did.
No
I think that one of the things is that Jack Dempsey and him actually look quite similar.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of an easy mistake to make. There were times when I got them mixed up as well.
Okay.
So that's probably what happened, because Dempsey was playing in 6. And Dempsey's actually not bad. And Jed Holloway, he's interesting, because when you look at him, he seems to get into the clear a lot, but doesn't seem particularly fast.
Right.
Which is slightly odd, but I guess he's just one of those people.
Good fast twitch fibers at the start. Good burst.
That's right, yeah. He's quick rather than fast.
Sure.
I think that's what they say in the NFL, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So, for the Reds, Tui put up another customary sort of 10-plus performance. This seems to be his MO. This is what he does.
Sure.
So, a good option. There wasn't really a whole lot else to take away from the Reds. It was interesting for me looking at Karevi, and we talked about him earlier as someone that you might want to trade away, and I'm still inclined to think that. His role is unusual, because I know last year there was this sort of hammering away at the goal line stuff that he used to do. Now what we were seeing in the game yesterday was him actually coming from deep, like almost playing as a second fullback, or when the ball goes to the fullback and they're looking to link up with someone, and it's generally a winger, he's there. He's there at the back, and I'm like, okay, I can't decide if that's a good thing or not. But maybe it's just him, a case of, in football you'll get a striker who's your star player and he's up front and he's not getting the ball because the rest of the team isn't playing well and he drops deeper and deeper to pick the ball up.
Yep.
It almost felt like that's what he was doing. Sure. He's like, the only way I'm going to get my hands on the ball is if I go and stand at fullback and I can field some of these kicks. So.
Yeah, so he picked up 11 or 12 points or something. I guess you're right. This is... happy enough with that from a midfielder at the moment. I'll take what I can get from a midfielder. They score double figures, but I am also a little bit concerned. Karibi isn't such a sexy name. He is for a lot of people that have played fantasy rugby, but a lot of people outside of fantasy rugby and Red's area probably don't necessarily see him as that sexy name. So I'm not. It's going to be difficult. I looked where he was, and he's somewhere just 18, 19, 20 position in terms of midfielders. So. Yeah, I don't know what you can do too much about his, playing on his reputation, but yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, if this was Moala, putting in similar kind of performances, you'd find it easier to trade Moala because people know who he is. Yeah,
exactly. Well, most of the people who are in the courtroom probably know who he is. Yeah. I had a question though on the same in the same breath. A yellow card to the head. A knee to the head is a yellow card. Is that the rule now?
It's not, but this was another strange one because it was the scrum collapses, the hooker for the Waratahs ends up on the ground underneath the scrum, and the scrum falls on top of him. Mm-hmm. To imply that there was some intent there to knee him in the head, I thought was stretching it a little bit. I thought it was too hard to say. Because if you look at it, if the scrum's going down, you are going onto your knees. Where is the knee supposed to go?
So, that was going to be my question. So, does it have to be intent? Kind of like murder in the first degree, he has to have premeditation in the States. Does it have to have intent if he's got a knee to his head?
I think so because
he's called it dangerous. He asked it. He said the first question he said was, "Is it dangerous?" And they said yes. And then obviously the next question was going to be, does it have intent? Because I think intent then gets it a red. So that was back to the original question, is a knee to the head a yellow card? Because I thought, personally, you obviously see it a little bit different to me. I know front rowers, and I know you know front rowers too. Maybe you're giving them a bit of a free pass, but the Reds had been killing them at the scrum, and I think they were pulling it. The Waratahs were collapsing, and I think Kafer made this point, and fair play to him. I think this is what happened. I think they were getting quite frustrated. I saw Faisi, I think his name is. Faisi is the hooker that actually did it. I think that was intent. I think he did do it on purpose. I know what his answer was, and I saw him running off saying, "You've got to be kidding. Where else is it going to go?" Exactly what you said. But I think it's like, hanging your arm out and saying, "Oh yeah, it's all right. You ran into it," type thing. Where else am I going to go? But I think that was. I was a bit surprised that it was just a yellow card. I guess ultimately is what I'm trying to say. Nick Phipps, top scoring for halfbacks this week, and a pretty dire week for halfbacks. But I saw most of it from that pass from to Folau for the assist. How did he look in general?
No, he still gets around the field though, and runs off people and does make breaks as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll generally see him get into open space once or twice a game, and amongst halfbacks, if you're doing that, that's usually enough to give you decent value, because not a lot of them are actually doing that at the moment.
Okay, all right. Kurtley Beale, so wanted to talk about that before. He's number 3 midfielder at the moment. We touched on how it's a bit of a difficult game being Derby and rain. 5 points. I know I think you're probably going to expect a little bit more from 12 from him, but I personally think gone are the days of what he was going to get at fly half. I know we also talked about him going at 15 as well, but what do you think for Kurtley?
Yeah, I've not been a huge fan. He wasn't someone that I looked at the points he was scoring earlier in the season and felt that was necessarily repeatable. So, yeah, I'm not crazy about him. He's not someone I'm targeting. You could look at it and say, well, if he's scoring, if he scored 5 points here, maybe, and with the change away from 10 and the kicking duties, you might think to yourself, well, here's an opportunity to go trade for him, and maybe there is. But for me, I'm kind of staying clear at this point.
Yeah, sure. No, that's fair. The last note that I have here on him is hopefully he got top dollar when we talked about trading him 2 weeks ago when he got that 40 burner.
Yeah.
And everyone loves a hard luck story. I thought I'd share one of my own. So I've got Samu Karevi was the last player going in one of my matchups. And on 79 minutes, he threw the ball at Karevi's feet, and Karevi knocked it on. And the resultant stat update, and thanks to that -1, I ended up tying my match. So if we're discussing Jake McIntyre in the next couple of weeks, I'm not going to be able to impart impartial advice and apologies, so factor that into your analysis. Yeah, dark.
So let's move on to the game that I would dub Whistlefest 2016. Just seemed like every time you look up, I'm assuming that Glenn Jackson must have gone through a couple of whistles at least during
attritional
the course of this game. Yeah, I'm sure he probably had lung problems, or at the very least he would have had a sore throat or something at the end of this. Did you have a similar sort of reaction to watching it?
I did, mate. Yeah, absolutely. This was the second of my triple header I had after spending most of the afternoon and evening at a winery, so it was difficult to actually stay awake for a lot of it. In fact, I missed Aidan Toa's try and had to reverse it and go back. But it didn't look that way to start with, because Kabili scored a try on about 38 seconds that got pulled up. And rightfully so, it was forward, but whether that would have had a whole different bearing on it, but yeah, either way. I don't know what to take from this match. Again, it's the Brumbies on tour. They haven't particularly played well again. The Cheetahs just played a little bit worse. One of the probably says it all. Did you know that Joe Tamani scored 0 run meters?
Yeah, I heard that.
0. 1 carry, 0. And he didn't get subbed.
Yeah, it was bizarre. Things just didn't go his way.
That kind of illustrates the game in itself. It just was all over the show a little bit.
It was, yeah.
Did you see the one of the cool passes, one of the good bits was Raymond Rule's kick pass to Blumenkeys?
I did actually. I made a note of that actually. The Rule kick pass. That takes some balls to do that, and as well as skill, because it could easily just go wrong. Imagine shanking that. You just like a complete idiot.
Absolutely. And so Blumenkeys was out on the wing with Sargo Peterson as well, so it wasn't like there was anyone behind him, so if he did shank that could have gone straight into his own 22.
Yeah. I think it actually did result in a Peterson try, didn't it?
It did. No, it was. It went to Blumenkeys, and Blumenkeys drew him past the last man, and Peterson did a little bit of work. I think he had to go around Toa, which is not easy, and score the try in the corner. Yeah, is it Sargil Peterson or is it Sergio Peterson? I've heard 16 different versions.
I have no idea.
Different commentators, different countries all over the show.
Yeah, no, we'll just stick with Peterson.
Yeah, go with Peterson.
So I guess he was the pick of the Cheetahs' backs, but Blumenkeys probably not too far behind.
No, he's always going to score quite well, I think. When they have that back three together, and when Peterson's there to help him finish off a few things like this, he's a good player. And he's got a decent boot on him as well, and I think he's sorting out his haircut by the look of it. But that was the knock on him, the haircut. I thought either way with Peterson, he can make his own shot. He looks dangerous and he can beat people in a short space and which is fantasy goodness for us. Whereas Raymond Rule, again, kind of illustrated the point where they need the backline flowing, or he needs to be on. It basically needs to pull an Invovo, get an intercept or pick a ball up and run 50 metres. But I guess the talking point from a fantasy rugby perspective as well is looking at Aidan Toa versus Coleman. So I want to put a question out there if there's any Brumbies fans listening, what they actually think. I think everyone's heard me bleating on about how Aidan Toa, and maybe I'll get your point of view as well, but he looked shaky again. His kicking was terrible. His left, the amount of times that he's put the ball up, everyone's put their head down and started running. As soon as they put their head back up again, they have to turn around and chase the ball back because it's only gone like 5 or 6 metres. What do you make of Toa? I know he scored the try, but I got to ask the question, and I'm still not convinced.
Seemed like every time, and because I was fast forwarding through the breaks in play, it seemed like every time I was stopping, I was seeing a look of disappointment on Toa's face as the ball sort of sailed into touch.
Giving the AR the teapot.
Yeah, not very far away from where he was standing. It was bizarre. I almost felt like I was watching the same incident again and again. There was him sort of dropping his head or throwing his hand in the air, either complaining or just being disappointed about how bad his kicking was from the back. So that doesn't really bode well, given that that's probably one of the primary reasons for playing in that position. So
that's what I said. So it's exactly why I think Larkham likes him there. But Coleman's got a left foot too. And Coleman only did make one clearance for touch off his left, but it was a belter. It was a beauty.
Yeah.
And it was 1 for 1, whereas, I'd hate to see his batting average Toas in terms of connections off foot.
Yeah.
Be a bit like me playing football.
So it does make you wonder, because Nigel R. Wong does get minutes.
He does.
At the end of games, whether they'll get to a point where they think, well, let's just stick R. Wong on the wing and we'll put Coleman at fullback and we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, so Coleman, he did look a little bit short of fitness and not quite the pocket rocket that we kind of usually expect from him, but he looked good. You know, he took a couple of breaks that he probably would have finished off had he had a couple of games under his belt, but I thought he looked okay. I personally would still roster Coleman over Toa, but I genuinely would like to hear from Brumbies fans and what they think about Aiden Toa versus Robbie Coleman and whether this is a thing or what, or maybe something to do with Aiden Toa knows where the bodies are buried. I'm not sure. One player that you've mentioned previously, though, was Sean Venter.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily do it with the run meters that we were kind of thinking that it would happen, but he did score well in what was a fairly average halfback week.
Yeah, I think we sort of discussed a few names, and he was one, and Andy Ellis was the other, and they were both actually decent.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I guess better than decent, considering how bad the halfbacks were this week. Probably both up inside the top 5, I would have thought.
They were. Yeah, exactly, they were. So,
so another guy that I just thought I'd mention, he got the try for the Cheetahs. His name sounds like an anagram of Nizam Kar, and he actually looks and plays a lot like him as well. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do know who you're talking about, but I'll give you a run at him first.
So, Azhar Kazim.
That's right.
Yeah, it almost does sound like an anagram of Nizam Kar. Like if you mixed around the letters, you'd somehow come up with the same.
Have you seen them in the same room together?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's...
Yeah, he scored quite well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he did all right. I mean, obviously a try always inflates figures. You can't read too much into it, but he looked all right in a Cheetahs team that was a little bit short on, I guess, inspiration of any kinds, really, except for Peterson and Blomberkeys when they got the chance. So, yeah, there really wasn't a lot to say about the Cheetahs. Another yellow card for a front rower, which I think another negative performance, maybe.
Yeah, it was a negative something or other that kills you.
Yeah. So,
but we did, it was against the Brumbies, you know, we did say that it was, you do have to temper expectations when you play the Brumbies. You know, there hasn't been too many point scorers playing against the Brumbies. It's a tough matchup for a lot of teams. Big team.
Yeah. So, what did you make of Matt Tamua taking a kick towards the end?
Odd. I don't know what to say. I kept on, I wondered if I'd missed something. I wonder if I'd fallen asleep again and Christian Leolefano had been taken off. But no. What did you think of that? I
did notice that Leolefano was involved in the play leading up to that try.
Oh, right, sure. Like the Thierry Henry penalty kick thing.
Yeah, and I think he'd taken the ball up close to the line and been tackled. And I just wondered whether he was perhaps shaken up in that tackle.
Sure.
And the kick, I think the try immediately followed that. So I think might just been a case of he might have just taken a knock. And it was at the end of the game, and they were just like, you just bang it over and we'll just move on, sort of thing. So yeah, not reading anything to it, especially considering that from memory he'd knocked over the 2 kicks just before that.
Yeah, he had.
So it wasn't like he'd just started shanking them and they're like, oh, let's give somebody else a go. So I just thought it was something interesting to note.
Yep, no, it's a good call.
And what do you make of the Brumbies driving maul defence? It seemed to account for about 70% of the penalties in this game.
Yeah, that's right.
If it was another thing I was watching on replay, it was Toa looking disappointed and a penalty going against the Brumbies trying to defend driving maul.
Well, it's like trial by numbers, right? They're trying to figure out different techniques every time, or roll the dice every time a different way. Not working so well.
A player we haven't talked about this season really at all, but he's got to be up there amongst some of the biggest duds or failures so far. Cabelli.
Yeah.
I think he's got
Yeah.
12, 15 points across the entire season.
Yeah, I think so as well. He's certainly got much better talent than that. And yeah, he's not really troubling. He's way down the list of scrum halves. I don't know what to make of him though, because I still see the talent there with him.
Right.
I guess there's not much you can do about that at the moment. I think you probably can find week to week someone a little bit better. But yeah, it worries me a little bit that he's just not getting that scrum half play, that kind of Argentinian play that he does for the national side into the Brumbies. Just not asked to do that role. They've just got the bigger bruises that they ask the ball to spread those contact areas. Kieran Draney does a lot of that resetting and then going back the other way that the Brumbies like to do.
So I guess the question is, would you stick by him? Would you, for instance, replace him with Sean Venter?
Sean Venter, no, I don't think I would. Maybe I'm giving him a little bit too much of a long leash there, and Sean Venter certainly has got twice as many points as him. But yeah, and that's just a gut feel. That actually hasn't got anything more than just a gut feel in it. and looking at his pedigree previous to this, but I can understand why people would go Sean Venter.
Okay, interesting. I don't know if you noticed this during the game. Did you see Glenn Jackson sort of guiding the Cheetahs around the field? There's at one point the ball was stuck at the back of a ruck and the halfback was kind of looking at one side, and Jackson's on the other side pointing, going, it's there, right. At the ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that was brilliant. I'm not sure if that's, I know that they kind of tell guys to, move back or take their hands off or do anything to try and avoid a penalty, but I've never seen anybody actually try to
that's right.
actually help out guys by going, the ball's here. You might walk up around and get it from here.
That's always been a bit of a source of frustration for me as well, though, is, when someone's swimming around a maul or whatever from a line out and he says, you're off, get back, come through the middle, that type of thing, or stop swimming. It's like, well...
It's coaching.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly what it's either a penalty or it's not. Shut your mouth, But I understand that if they didn't do that, then there'd be lots of penalties and people like a free-flowing game, so it's almost a necessary evil.
Yeah. Anybody else in this game that you want to talk about?
No, match of the day, last game, I've had enough.
Fair enough.
Let's plough straight into the free agent desk. So players that we're going to say are less than 50% owned in your league. Less than 50% owned in all leagues. So there's a more than likely chance that they're available in your league is who we want to kind of suggest coming on. But who's your number one? I think I know.
It's Halahola.
We them boys.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he has to be right up there. I hate repeating names in this, but there's still kind of low percentages. Jed Holloway's still only owned in 37% of leagues. So I think he's a good player to come in there. Personally, I would look at Louis Fichet as that backup fly half. If you've got someone there that's not doing a particularly good job for you, or you don't have a backup fly half, then I'd look at that. Sargel Peterson's only owned in 30% of leagues. What do you think of Reece Hodge at 24%? Now injuries coming up. Yeah.
I guess he's somebody that's going to be back on the radar now. We did say last week that we'd take an injury to get him back in there. So he's a decent enough player, I guess, even without the goal kicking. But I think with the Rebels, as we're seeing, it's kind of all matched up base, isn't it? So you'll probably play them against some of the weaker teams, but don't expect too much in other weeks against the stronger opposition.
Yeah, that's a good call. I didn't mention it in the other end, but I see that Cam Crawford came on, so I didn't realise he was still playing rugby. But it turns out he is, and he came on the wing as well. So I do wonder with the Tom English injury, how that is going to shake up and whether they maybe put Placid on the wing or whether they go for Crawford, who actually has been okay the last few seasons playing fantasy rugby, so it's a bit of an interesting one. But we touched on it in the Chiefs game. Masarewa should be back on the radar as well, 11% owned.
Yeah.
Ryan Viljoen's still only owned in 10% of leagues, and I think a lot of managers can do a lot worse than having him as your kind of fourth or fifth outside back on the bench.
That's right. Did take a long range goal kick during the Sunwolves match and only just missed.
Yep. Yamada as well. He's only owned in 24% of leagues. I think he has to be owned.
He does. Yeah.
There's one other player that I wanted to mention that when I was reading that article about English being possibly out for the season and Placid and Tamati Ellison was the other one that was injured, they made mention of Sefa Novalu. And they said that he is possibly 1 or 2 games away from being ready.
Wow. Okay,
exactly.
That's good news, especially considering I cut him last week.
A lot
pretty much on your advice.
A lot of players cut him. Hadn't heard a thing, wasn't anywhere. This goes back to my rant again. I'm not going to trot out the same rant about accessibility of information, of news, of player news and injuries, but it's another example of, we should know a lot more about that. But really, really interesting news. Does that then, if he's available, obviously goes to number 1 on your waiver?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. So just have a quick look, see if he's available, and if he isn't available, and someone's in their team and he's sitting there, see if you can dangle out someone for him, someone like a Tom English. No, I'm not. I actually wouldn't. That's not anything that I'd advise doing. For me, I know there's something about a moral fibre of a fantasy player offering up a player that you know is out for potentially this season in a trade just doesn't work. So offer something, but you may not need to offer something that's of super value. You may be able to offer up a bench midfielder to get him, because they may not have heard the news.
So I guess we like to get some of the unfancied names, and a very unsexy name, possibly the most unsexy name you could have, is Peter Grant. And he put up 15.5 points this week. John O'Lance is out for a little bit. The Force are not a terrible team.
No.
And I think when they get back home, they'll be okay. And if he can score 15 points in a bit of a blowout loss, then I think when they get home, he could be, you could do worse, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, and if you follow Peter Grant's sentiment about how good the Force are, he came back to win a title. That's right, he did. So, yeah. Better than even chance that happens. All right, anything more for the game week then, or any other free agents to pick up? Actually, sorry, just before I cut off, so we dismissed it last week because the Lions were on a bye. We had that false alarm with Elton Yanchtees, and there's a bit of flurry of activity around Marnix Boshoff, but come Wednesday, once the free agents run and once the waiver wire is actually run on the Tuesday night, and you have a spot available and you own Elton Yanchtees, I would be tempted just to put him on your bench, just in case. More often than not, as you say, we don't have any news, stuff happens. If you just want to have a little bit of cover, I think Boshoff, just in case the unthinkable happens and there is actually a problem with his wrist and he's out for a little bit longer and it's been misreported. Okay, that's probably all the time we have for you. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft, at Fantasy RUG Draft. Mossman's on at Nathan Mossman, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman. I'm going to get my press officer to do this bit. LT Rapido.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a dummy!